In this new series, we'll be taking a closer look at characters that we might have talked about briefly in one of our stories here at Bounding Into Comics. Although we're not going into a huge essay about each character, we'll touch on a few things they've contributed towards in the comics and whatever other mediums they might have shown up for, like films or TV shows. Mostly because we've heard some rumors and speculation about such and such characters appearing in a film down the line. This week, we'll be covering some stuff we've heard coming out of Thor Love and Thunder. We won't talk about the main guy, Thor Odinson, of the 616 reality in the comics, but we'll take a look at some of the other versions of Thor that came together during the events across the multiverse that somehow put anyone and everyone who ever held an enchanted Asgardian hammer together in the same location. The collective being named the Thor Corps, the hammers being Mjolnir, Stormbreaker, and Stormcaster. The original team consisted of Eric Masterson, Thunderstrike, Beta Ray Bill, the current reality Thor, and Thor from the future, Dargo Couture. Those issues were way back in the early 90s with art by Pat Oliphant and writing by Tom DeFalco with Thor number 440. The second iteration happened during the events of Battleworld, where God Emperor Doom takes the reins over anyone who ever held the Hammer of Worthiness, and a number of characters across the multiverse of Thors came together as sort of his police force. The introduction of this massive team happened in Secret Wars number 2 by Jonathan Hickman and Esad Ribic. The Thors served God Emperor Doom without question, as he had stolen the omnipotent abilities of the Beyonders for himself and created a world that they currently reside on. Of course, Doom is the bad guy, and the various heroes of Battleworld find this out at some point, and a big battle ensues. Battleworld, get it? That reality gets obliterated and the multiverses are restored to their original states. Maybe that's a little too much information, but all of this is just to know where some of these guys come from and what we could expect going into the next Thor film. Maybe. But let's deviate a little from that for this first one. This entry in the series will actually focus on a villain in a limited run of the Thor comics. We'll talk about the Thor Corps in a little bit, but because I had it mostly written out, and it looks like this stuff will be used to some extent for the next Thor film, Love and Thunder. So potential spoilers for the film if we're actually getting any of these elements adapted. This guy is something of an everyman for the audience to connect with. Going into the story by Jason Aaron and art by Esad Ribic, the villain of this title is somewhat of a mystery to the audience, but a well-known antagonist to Thor. We see a younger version of Thor confronting the figure, a humanoid-looking creature cloaked in black, with the ability to summon a weapon from the same black essence comprising its cloak. As the story progresses, we get a little glimpse into its past, the present, and the future of what Gorr had been and what he will become. We see a past where Gorr takes it upon himself to wreak havoc across the galaxy of gods. The present where he employs the help of his all-black animated hounds to do a bulk of his dirty work, and a future where he is close to his goal of destroying all the gods of the universe and preserves an aged Thor as the last one to kill. The story gets a little messy as the present-day Thor employs the use of time travel to make his way to the future, to find the God Butcher enslaving a multitude of the pantheon of gods to build a bomb. This bomb has the power to rip through time and space to destroy all the gods who ever were or whoever will be. It isn't until issue 6 of the story that we dive deeper into the history of Gorr and what he was before, a normal child on a barren planet whose mother was devoured by beasts despite their many prayers to the gods for their protection. A world where he becomes a husband, a father, only to watch his wife get swallowed up by the earth and his son to wither away in starvation. And wishing to bury his offspring only to be told to do so would be blasphemy by his highly superstitious brethren. He forsakes their way, and they leave him to die alone in the harshness of their planet's desert sun. Here he happens upon the conclusion of a battle between two gods, one with golden armor and another clad in black. Plunged in the chest of the golden-armored god is the Black Blade, the Necrosword, belonging to Null, the symbiote god. Gorr, understandably pissed that the gods would choose squabbling amongst themselves rather than helping their worshippers in their hours of most need, where they have suffered great loss and pain, gains the attention of the all-black Necrosword, and it finds its new host in the forlorn creature. Gorr, now equipped with the power of a god-slaying weapon, uses it to travel the galaxy to search for other gods to slay. There are two things going on in the morality story of what's being put on the pages here, maybe three. It's not so much the story of abandonment by the deities that comes across, but rather a false sense of reliance on such things rather than the power and resilience of self to endure throughout life's hardships. They call this perseverance. And Gorr and many of his race seem to rely on waiting for the gods to answer their prayers, rather than making things happen on their own. Another somewhat lessened thing that happens to come across is blame. It isn't warranted, it isn't focused. It's just anger at the world, the universe, all of existence, and putting the blame on something or everything because it isn't how we want or expect it to be. For this and the previous thing, the audience may relate to Gorr more than they do Thor. But the lesson learned for Gorr's example is that circumstances of demise or fortune are completely of our own making. As is the lesson Gorr learns before his head is removed and his power is lost, but the reader gets a sense that he lost both of those long ago. It's a short story that tests the waters of our own humanity versus those of the ever-blaming Gorr. It's a lot of things wrapped up in these issues for misplaced faith and strength and staying power of belief systems and the dangers of trusting in power that changes us from what we once were to monsters. Gorr the God Butcher eventually becomes the thing he hated the most in all the galaxy. In effect, this was the failure of the weapon that would kill all the gods who ever were and ever will be, that his power leaves him because it's a self-serving essence that will not defy its own existence for the sake of the wishes of its host. This is important to what's happening next in the series of Thor films because in an Instagram live video,
and some of the stuff from the comics as well. I would just say space sharks. So if you know any of the Thor comics, space sharks. I think if you look up space sharks, you'll get an idea. You get a good idea of what the film is going to be.
Taika Waititi, the director for Thor: Love and Thunder, teased the viewers with the idea of space sharks. The only Thor-related title that used sharks is this Jason Aaron run on Thor: God of Thunder, and it's used in issue number 8 as the creatures orbit Gorr's planet, feeding upon the flesh of the dead gods he had slain. There's a lot of other stuff with space sharks, or as the issue calls them, star sharks, as they're used extensively in the history of Marvel Comics. And with that, we'll have to wait and see just how much, if any, of this story the folks at Marvel Studios will adapt to the big screen. Do you think the villain of the film will be Gorr and they'll introduce the all-black Necrosword? Or is the Star Shark, Space Shark reference to something else in the comics we totally missed? Sound off in the comments or hit us up on social media. Don't forget to massacre that like button and follow Bounding Into Comics for the latest takes and all the pop culture nerdy news out there. Until next time.